Avoidance will often send you a crazy amount of mixed messages. On one hand, they're telling you that they're just not ready for a relationship, that they need time and space to work on themselves. They need to discover themselves, and you need to move on. But on the other hand, they're texting you. They're saying they miss you, sometimes even spending time with you, and maybe even initiating physical intimacy with you. But then when you push for more, they pull back. They tell you that you need to be free to find someone who can love you the way that you deserve to be loved. But then they'll tell you that they miss you and they don't want to lose you, but they're just not ready. They're coming and going and coming and going and playing yo-yo with your heart. It is anxiety creating. It is crazy making because you cannot figure out where you stand with this person. Do they want you? Do they not? Do they have feelings for you? Or could they care less? Because you're getting both signals from both polar opposite ends. You come forward towards them, they pull away and ghost for a bit. They come towards you, and then when you start to really re-engage, they pull back. It is the constant push-pull dance. Understand, at the core of avoidant behavior is a lot of fear and insecurities. And this stems from childhood emotional neglect. This is a person that received consistent neglect from their parents or caretakers. They weren't given the unconditional love and nurturing in the way that they needed as children. Their feelings were routinely dismissed and rejected. If they had negative emotions, it was shot down. They often had a parent or caretaker that had high expectations that was smothering and not a nurturing way. So they learned that if you rely on anybody for your emotional needs, you're going to get rejected, disappointed, perhaps even emotionally or physically abandoned. If they express themselves, they learned that that equals rejection and abandonment. They personalize that neglect they received as children and grow up to feel like there must be something wrong with them, that they must be unlovable, defective, and worthless. They also learned that if you get too close to anybody, you lose your independence, you get smothered. And if you lose your independence and autonomy, the person you lose that to is going to reject and abandon you. So they have these walls up a mile wide, all due to fear. And fear is a powerful emotion. It is one of the most powerful human emotions, but it's also one of the most irrational. Deep down, they long for love, they long for connection, but when they get it in a significant way, it triggers those fears because closeness is growing. There's communication, there's expectations, there's disagreements, all which trigger their fears of abandonment and rejection. So you get the push-pull. Part of them wants the relationship, they want the attention from you, they want the closeness, but when they get it, they run from it. So they are constantly seeking the validation from their partner or ex. They want to know that this person wants them, that they are desired, because when they get that validation, they feel better about themselves. Due to those deep insecurities and lack of self-worth, they've learned to rely on external validation to feel better about themselves. They don't know how to internally validate themselves. The core self-esteem of a severe dismissive or fearful avoidant is very, very low. And if they're a fearful avoidant, they often experienced abuse and trauma in addition to that neglect, creating further insecurities. So when they're seeking this validation, when they're coming hot and cold, there's a consistent theme. They are only thinking of themselves because of their own insecurities. They're looking for what soothes them in the moment, that validation, or the distance, whichever soothes their current fear or desire in the moment. They're not considering how these mixed messages impact the other person. That's because they are hyper self-focused due to their own insecurities. Emotional availability requires the ability and willingness to empathize with your partner, to feel their emotions along with them, to actually share their emotions and care about their wants, needs, and feelings. A person that's emotionally unavailable is an insecure person that really is only able to consider themselves, their own perceived wants, needs, feelings, or fears. Especially when they're triggered, they're not able or willing to consider the emotional impact that their behavior has on the other person, which is why they're able to consistently send these mixed messages, because they're simply not considering the other person. No, they're not trying to hurt you. They're not trying to hurt their partner. They're not a narcissist. But they're not going out of their way to not hurt the other person either. What they're showing is they're barely able to see past their own nose, and they're only really able and willing to consider what their perceived needs are. And this is why it is so profoundly important for you to have, hold, and enforce boundaries with the avoidant, regardless of whether they are your current partner or your ex. Your boundaries are your limits of what you will and will not tolerate, what you want, don't want, what you need, don't need, and what your expectations are. And you can assert those in a nice, kind, non-confrontational way. This is what I need. These are what my expectations are. This is what works for me. This is what doesn't. For example, I need consistency in a relationship. When I'm constantly getting mixed signals, hot, cold, that gives me anxiety and it doesn't work for me. So what works for me is that we either consistently work towards building a great relationship together, or the alternative doesn't work for me. And I request my time and space so I can heal and move on. See, what you're doing is you're standing up for your own wants and needs in a kind and empathetic way, because your heart is not a yo-yo. You wouldn't do the hot, cold dance with them. You wouldn't play games with their heart, and you don't deserve to have it happen to you. Now, if they're not able or willing to meet your expectations or show consideration for your boundaries, yes, you can potentially lose the relationship. But what you're doing is you're losing a one-sided relationship or situationship where your wants and needs are not being considered and you are completely catering to the other person. That's not really a real relationship. That is a one-way street, which also requires you self-abandoning and holding no boundaries. That's not healthy for you. You prioritize this person, and you deserve someone that'll prioritize you in return. A person that genuinely cares about your wants, needs, and feelings is going to respect your boundaries. They make a mistake, they'll take accountability and work to do better. The person that is selfish, emotionally unavailable, they're going to feel like you having the boundary is the problem to begin with, and likely are going to either blame you or run away or both. And if they do leave, well, what they're doing is they're freeing you up to give your love, your time, and energy into a person that'll give it to you in return. Your boundaries are your sword and shield. Otherwise, these hot and cold games can go on for many months or even years, valuable years of your life that you won't get back. Better to spend them investing into a person that's investing into you. If that happens to be the avoidant, if they put the effort in when you start to hold boundaries, great. If not, it's unfortunate, but now you're free to meet the person that will respect your boundaries. Your boundaries are how you will get to that emotionally available person.